Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and let's talk about the books that I read in March. In March, I read a total of 6 books. During the school year, that is pretty typical for me. It always feels low compared to other people, but we are not here to play comparison games. We are here to read, enjoy, and discuss books. That was a total of about 2,700 pages. For the first time in quite a while, every single book I read was some version of a fantasy book. Some were fantasy romance, some were pure fantasy, some were historical fantasy, but I was definitely having a fantasy moment in March. What we're going to do here is we are going to start at my lowest rated book and we are going to work our way up, build some anticipation before we get to my highest rated book of the month. To start things off, my lowest rated book of the month was A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. This book follows Freya, who has been blessed by the gods. She's basically an invincible shield maiden in battle, but she's been keeping this a secret her whole entire life. It turns out that there's been a prophecy made about this invincible shield maiden, and these kingdoms want to get their hands on her to help further their reign, their territory, their power. So Freya is married off to this powerful king who is much, much older than her. She is his second wife. There's not really any love in the marriage, but where there is love is between Freya and the king's son, Bjorn. Things I loved about this book. The world building was fantastic. The integration of the Norse gods was also fantastic. What was not fantastic for me was Freya. She was a little bit annoying and she made some really, really dumb decisions that were not going to help her out or really anybody around her at the end of the day. But this book still stood the test of the setting being so immersive that I want to read the second book just to experience Danielle L. Jensen's writing and world building again, if that makes sense. So while this was not like a complete win for me, it also wasn't a complete failure for me either. And I have friends who I read this with that fell on both sides of the charts. I had some friends who gave it like a 2.5. I had some friends give it a 5-star. I fell in the middle and this one landed at 3.5 stars for me. Next up, we have Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I gave this book a 3.75 stars and I thought that it was so charming. I listened to this on audiobook and I actually had to slow down the audiobook because the narrator does have an English accent, and first of all, it was a little bit hard to follow an accent when you're not used to hearing it, but also I was just enjoying hearing her read the story to me. But this book follows Dora, who has been fairy cursed as a child and is living with half a soul. And because she has only half a soul, she doesn't quite understand emotion. Her cousin travels to London during the season to try and find a husband. Her cousin also is like, I am not going to London without my favorite person, and her favorite person happens to be Dora. While they're there, they attend balls, they go out on the town, they walk around the promenade. Think Bridgerton for sure, but make it magical with fairies. And I thought that it was just the sweetest thing. This book isn't like big epic fantasy. It's very sweet and quiet and calm. There's also a lot of injustice talked about in this book, and I really enjoyed it. It's just not one that I'm going to think about for the rest of my life. And so that's why it landed at a 3.75. I do recommend it, especially if you're like me and you're just like aching for those Bridgerton feels right now. Next up in March, we're going to talk about Assistant to the Villain. I was not expecting to love this book, but I ended up really liking it. I have watched this author's TikToks. She started this book as a TikTok series, if you didn't know, and it's very slapsticky, cheesy, silly, and she basically started theorizing what would happen if the fantasy villain had this sunshine, bubbly assistant. What would their dynamic be like? What would some of their adventures be like? And this book really takes that and just gives it some plot and gives it an overarching storyline. So Evie is unemployed. She really needs a job. And through circumstances, she ends up working for the villain. And the villain is not this old, creepy wizard guy. He is a young, leather-clad hottie. You know, he just is. He lives in this big castle with a bunch of employees, and Evie happens to be one. She starts working as his personal assistant, and it's just really funny seeing such a sunshine, good-hearted person work for evil. And it's just charming. There's a little frog who can hold up a sign to communicate with just one word. There are adventures, there's family drama, and it was just really sweet. Do you know what this book reminded me of in the weirdest way? Harvest Moon 64. I can't explain that. I can't explain it at all, but This book made me think of that. I gave it 4 stars. I really liked it. I can't wait for the sequel. In March, I also read A Dawn of Onyx by Kate Golden, and this was for the Tales of Starlight book club that my friends Sam and April host on Instagram/YouTube. Every other month they pick a book. And this one was a lot of fun. I will not say that this book was life-changing at all. I thought that the plot and the writing style was very, very simple, and it lacked a lot of complexity that I normally look for in fantasy literature, but for some reason it was exactly what I needed when I picked it up. I went through some like mental health at the end of February and beginning of March, and I needed something that was going to get me back into fantasy, but that was going to keep it simple for my poor little overworked brain and heart. So this book follows our main character, whose name is Arwen. The continent is set up as different kingdoms that are based around gemstones, and she lives in... Where does she live? I don't remember. She doesn't live in Onyx, though. Onyx is the big, bad, scary place. But her brother has been conscripted to fight in the war against Onyx and randomly shows up at home one day, and he is not supposed to be home. In fact, he was presumed dead. Soon after her brother shows up, all of these Onyx knights come running after them, and her family decides to escape, but Arwen is caught. Arwen then goes to Onyx to work as a healer for the kingdom in exchange for her life, basically. And from there, she makes friends, she escapes prison, and she might even fall in love with someone that she probably should not be falling in love with. There's secrets, there's lies, there's betrayal, there's romance, and there's magical creatures. And the magical creatures and the creepy forest and the gothic stronghold were definitely my favorite thing about this book. You'll notice that a lot of the things that I have been enjoying lately is really strong world building and like the aesthetic of where we are in a book. And this book did that really well. There's a dragon that shows up in a way that you might not be expecting a dragon to show up. And I thought that there were really sweet, lovable side characters as well. The sequel to this does come out in April, and while I probably won't pick it up right away, I do want to get to it soon. I gave it 4 stars. Truthfully though, I gave it 4 stars, but it's truly probably more like a 3.75 just because I didn't get everything I wanted from it, you know? So I enjoyed it. More could have been done, but it was good. Now we're getting in to my favorite books of the month, and I'm so excited to talk about them. Y'all don't even know. So the first book that we're going to talk about was Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. Everyone is talking about this series. If you know, you know. Guys, I read this in like 30 hours, and I'm obsessed now. I cannot wait to read the next book. This book is about our main character, and her name is Diem. And Diem has lived her whole life. She is also a healer, much like Arwen was in A Dawn of Onyx. But she's working for a healer for her kingdom, and she is very much mortal. She is human, and that kind of goes against the people who run society, and they are called the Descended. They're basically descended from the gods. This book is essentially a rebellion plotline of the mortals wanting to fight the Descended, and Diem keeps getting caught up in the middle of mortals versus Descended because secrets come to light and people that she meets happen to be on both sides of this rebellion. Her family, her friends, the people that she's grown up with are very much on the mortal side. She's begun working at the palace in the kingdom where she lives, and she's meeting some of these Descended, and it just goes through a lot because she's a healer and she doesn't believe in hurting anybody, whether they're Descended or mortal. She believes that she is called to help people and not hurt people. And so how does she be a part of a rebellion that is going to hurt somebody in the end? This book is slow burn romantic. This book is action-packed. I can tell that it is setting up for a very, very epic journey through the end. And the cliffhanger that we are left on is epic. Like, the fact that I have not picked up book 2 is taking the most restraint and patience that I think I've ever shown and exhibited in my life. I'll get to it soon, but I highly, highly, highly recommend this. It's not perfect, but it sure is a lot of fun. My favorite book of March was When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This book was the setting of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild put into a book with an amazing set of characters, an amazing storyline, the most creative way I've ever seen magical creatures integrated into a book, and I loved every second of this brick. I read it on my Kindle. I loved it so much that I had to order a physical copy. I don't do that very often, but I sure did it for this book. This book follows Rave, who is an assassin, and it also follows Khan, who is the king of a neighboring kingdom, and he is looking for something, someone. It becomes clear as you read the book. Their paths cross, and we have a very fun, witty, slow burn, tension filled romance between the two of them. It's very will they, won't they. It's very much I want to kill you, but also like you're hot vibes. It doesn't read like a fantasy romance though. It reads like you are playing Zelda Breath of the Wild with these characters, but with dragons. Rave and Khan just go on the best journey. There are amazing side characters. The magic and the way that things just work in this world and the creativity that Sarah A. Parker had to, I mean, there's hardly ever a mention of a creature that actually exists on Earth. She came up with so many original ideas. You go into the shops with Brave, and it feels like you are playing a video game and you're walking into a shop and you have the option to buy all of these quirky little things that you've never seen before. It's dark. There are a lot of really sad things in our characters' past that get explored, and it's beautiful. This book is so hard to explain, but please just trust me. When I recommend this, I recommend it with my whole heart. I am watching Sarah A. Parker's Instagram frequently to see if she has updates on writing the second book. She says that she is writing it, but we don't have a publication date, we don't have a title, we don't have a cover or anything yet. So I just have to hold this book and carry it around with me and hope by osmosis that I will get some sort of clue into what could happen in book 2. I will probably reread this. If an audiobook comes out, man, I would love it if an audiobook came out and I could just listen to it. And I also wanted to read you the dedication, and then I'll shut up about it. For those who feel small and quiet, spread those wings and roar. Let me know what your favorite book that you read in March was. I want to know. Tell me. As always, guys, my social media is linked down below, and I would love it so much if you liked this video and subscribed. I love talking to you guys in the comments. I love sending messages and getting messages from y'all on Instagram. It makes my day. You have no stinking idea. Anyway, guys, I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.